As you can probably guess at this point, our edit page for our colors example is currently not functioning. If I try to go to the edit page for one of my colors, I come up with a lot of errors. Basically the exact same symptoms that we saw on our show page and on our new page. The problem, of course, is that we have fundamentally very much changed the way that we're actually handling colors, and our edit page is going to need to be updated to reflect that. If we take a look at the edit page itself, up at the top here is the prime offender, where I'm actually trying to require my color library, which no longer exists. Instead, what I'm going to want to do there is simply require my color class. The next things that happen then are a little bit similar to what we had previously in the new page, where this page is basically sort of playing two different roles. In one case, the edit page needs to be able to receive an ID as part of the URL, and then based on that ID it should find a color and load that color into the form. That's essentially what we're seeing happen here at the beginning of my edit page all the way down to this big if statement. Once we get into that if statement, this is then the code that actually executes whenever the form itself is submitted. So let's start off kind of like we did with the new page and see if we can't kind of tackle it one piece at a time. For starters, the way that the page was working previously whenever it was first visited was we started off by checking for an ID as a get parameter. We then went through, had a bunch of individual variables for storing the different attributes, the different values related to our color. We then loaded in all our colors using our old load colors function. We then checked to see if we actually had a color with that ID. If we did, that became our selected color. Otherwise, we redirected the user away. And then finally, we pulled all the values out of that selected color, which was effectively just an array at that point, and we put it into our individual variables. With our new object-oriented way of doing things, I think we can simplify this considerably. What if we were to wipe out everything here and replace all of that with the retrieval of a color, very much like the way we did over on the show page? I'll say from my color class, use the find method, and using the find method, pass it the ID that we received as a get parameter. Just like back over on the show page, that ID may be there or it may not. And if there is an ID there, it may be valid or it may be not. But the find function now is going to take care of that for us, and it's either going to give us back an actual color or it will give us back false. If it gives us back false, so we could say something like if not color, then it's at that point we could then say redirect back over to the index page. The exit then will cause this script to stop executing and nothing will happen. So if we get that far, we don't need this extract anymore, then we know that we should have a color. If we actually do have a color, what are we then going to do with it? Well, the actual content on the edit page is using the exact same form we were using on the new page. That form calls the text field function, and the text field function we've already updated to be able to handle color objects. So let's see if maybe that isn't good enough to get our edit form to be able to show up. Back over in the browser, if I refresh, yes, sure enough, my edit form now appears, and the edit form is filling in with the data from the color that I said that I wanted to update. If I go back to the home page and I choose a different color, maybe I will choose the dark blue here and select edit. There we go, dark blue and the values for dark blue are all filled into the edit form for me, so it looks like it's working well. So what's actually happening now is whenever I click on the edit link, we use the ID that's being passed to retrieve a color. We see that we have a color. We then actually use that color in the form itself. The form itself, just like on the new page, takes that color and passes it to our text field function, which then extracts the values from it and uses those values to actually fill in the form fields themselves. So it's a good start. That actually went relatively easily. Moving on then to actually updating the color. Everything inside the if statement here is where we are more or less updating our color. The if statement checks to see if the form was submitted. If it was, then what we were doing previously was we were extracting all the values from the post array, validating those values. If we didn't find any errors, then we went into a routine where we were actually trying to save the color. Because of the changes we've made to our color class, and especially because of a lot of the new capabilities we added for the new page, this should all get considerably simpler now. I don't need to extract to an array because there really is no array being used, and I don't need to do any of this validation because that's all inside the object itself now. Next, I have an if statement that checks to see if there are errors, but the errors themselves are actually inside the object, and I don't see any reason I should need to ask about them here. I think maybe what I would prefer to do at this point is to simply take the color that we're supposed to be updating. Maybe I will create an update method for it, and I will pass that method the values that I want to use to update it. So these incoming values from the post array, essentially the values that came from the submitted form, I'll pass those into an update method of my color. The update method, of course, doesn't exist yet. We'll need to write that. We could have that update method then update the color itself. We could have it validate that those updates are proper, and then we could have it save all in one big step. That could then return true or false, which could be used here in this if statement. If everything submits and it seems to work well, then how about we just, at that point, redirect to the show page and call it done. So our update page or our edit page could be something a bit like this. It's actually in a lot of ways like the direction we went with the new page. Much shorter, much cleaner, and it looks like the only thing that really needs to be added is we need to be able to add this ability to have a color updated. So let me jump over to the color class. Let me come down to where I put in my save method below, and I think maybe right in that same general area, I'm going to now add public function update. We'll say that the update function is going to be passed some data. That's an associative array. In a way, then, that makes it a lot like our constructor. Our constructor was set up so it could be passed an associative array. It then took all these values and put them into the object itself. I'm going to want my update method to do something very much like that, so much like that that there might even be another situation where I could share a little bit of code between those two methods. But as it is, I think I'll basically keep it a little more isolated, a little more simple here. So let's say into this object's name, store the name value that comes from the data. Into this object's red value, store the red value that's coming from the data. Then into this object's green value, take the green value from the data. And finally into this object's blue value, take the blue value from the data. So again, like I said, very much actually like what's taking place in the constructor. Once those values have all been updated, oh, and by the way, notice that I'm not updating the ID. The ID itself should never change, no matter what else happens to a color. IDs should be fixed for life, fixed forever. So just the name, red, green, and blue values is all I'm going to change. Once that's all done, very much like we did up in the save function, I think I probably want to load my colors, validate, and then if we're valid, go through and actually save. That's going to be so similar. In fact, I think I might copy what we have here in the save function. I'm going to paste it down here in my update function. One thing that'll be different is that the update function does not need to find the ID. The ID should already be there because this is not a new color. This is a color that already exists. Also, this part where before I was adding the new color to the array, that doesn't actually need to happen. In this particular case, the color itself will need to replace itself in the array, which is basically what I believe is happening here. If we take the ID that we already have for this color, we take this color and we have it overwrite itself. We are pretty much overwriting the old copy of this color, that's the copy that came from the file, with this new copy, the copy that has been updated based on the form submission. Once that's done, if we then go ahead and save, hopefully that will do the trick for us. Let's take a look and see how that works. If I jump back over to the browser, refresh my edit page, everything seems to be pretty okay. If I wipe out one of my colors to test validation, things seem to have gone bad there. I've gotten an error and redirected back over to my index page. What could have happened? Under what circumstance do we get sent back to the index page with an error of 2? Looking at the edit page, that seems to happen if we don't have a color. Now, if I submitted my form and my form did not bring the color's ID with it when it was submitted, then when the page reloaded to actually process the form data, there wouldn't have been an ID there. Why would that have happened? If I come over and look at my edit.view page, look at this. In my form, the form is submitting to edit.php, but then the ID it's trying to get is from selected color, some old left behind code. There's actually a few things it looks like here in this file that needs to be updated. For example, errors here is not its own array anymore. It's now part of the color. So color errors, same thing right here. Color errors. And then when I need the ID of the color, that would now be color ID. Can't forget my $sign. With that little file updated, let me jump back over to the browser again. Let's go and try and edit one of the colors. I'll try and edit the color white here. Here we are. If I wipe out one of its values and submit, we came right back again, so we're still here on this page. It filled in the piece of data for me instead of showing me the blank that I had just put there and telling me there was a validation error. So it seems like something's a little bit strange there. Let's again go look back at the edit page. Here's certainly what could be part of the problem. In our if statement, where we're checking to see if the form is submitted, we're looking for a field called color name, which doesn't exist. Since that doesn't exist, it means that we're never actually going through and trying our update, which means validate is never being run. So let me change that so that that field is now properly just called name, and let's see how that works. So I'm again here on my edit page for white. If I wipe out one of the values and submit, there we are. It comes back and it keeps the form filled in with my previous values, even when they're incorrect, and it shows me my validation problem. If I put a value back in there and maybe make a change, if I hit update now, it didn't take us to the show page. Instead, it took me back to the index page, but it does look like it actually edited. I do believe that was supposed to take us to the show page, wasn't it? Let's go check again. Yes, it was. Oh, and same problem I had over on the new page. There's another variable there that I forgot to update. This should be the colors ID, not just a ID variable all on its own, like I had previously. There we are, all pinned in the value of the ID of the color. Let's try again. I will edit my value for snow. I'll make it FE for the green value. I submit. Now we're going to the show page. It looks like the value updated, and I guess eureka, I think we have it. Considering all the work that we had done on the new page, it's nice that a little of that actually was paying off now. There really wasn't a whole lot we had to do on the edit page other than a little bit of restructuring, a little bit of not forgetting about changing some of my variables. But more or less the only new code it seems like we really had to write was this update function, which is itself is not terribly complicated. So that's a nice breath of fresh air. Maybe this object-oriented stuff is starting to pay off now.